Hi everybody, it is Jennifer Hour from Jersey Family Fun, and welcome to another Stories with Jen. This week I have a slightly different story for you. It is geared towards your older child, your student who might be in the younger elementary grades or entering middle school. It is about a 4th grade student. It is called The Math Kids, the Prime Time Burglars. So while I think kids of all ages will enjoy this book, it's definitely something if you have a younger child that you're going to sit down and read with them or her, because there are not as many pictures as in a traditional picture book. There are some illustrations throughout the chapters, but it is mostly a chapter book for those kids in those older elementary grades. It's a great story. I'm going to share with you chapter 1 because I want you to get a little teaser for what the story is all about, but it is 15 chapters and I don't want to give away that all in one story time on there. So let me tell you what it tells you on the back of the book about this story. Life for Jordan, Justin, and Stephanie isn't easy. Extra homework, a string of mysterious burglaries that has the whole neighborhood on edge, unwanted attention from the neighborhood bully Robbie. Luckily, the 3 friends soon learn that their new math club may just give them the way to solve all the problems that they're having. So imagine that. If you have a kid who loves math, they're going to love this kind of story. They're going to be able to relate to the characters in it. I've already learned some tricks about doing some math, and I love math within the first couple pages. So I want you to listen along to the first chapter. Let me know what you think, and if you're going to be picking up this book for your kids. By David Cole. Chapter 1. Everything changed the afternoon she marched into our 4th grade classroom, her black ponytail bouncing in rhythm with her footsteps. "Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie," she announced from the front of the room. I looked on in amazement. Here she was, a new kid in a new school where she didn't know anybody, and she walked in like she owned the place. That is so cool, I thought, wishing I had that kind of confidence. For the first time that day, our teacher, Mrs. Gauch, smiled, and you could almost feel some of the tension from the morning easing. "Class, this is Stephanie Lewis," she said. She looked down at the paperwork Stephanie had brought with her. Her family just moved here from California. Stephanie's favorite subject is math, and she loves to play soccer. I hope everyone will make her feel welcome. Stephanie, please take an empty desk. I'm sure you're going to love it here. Stephanie smiled and made her way toward an empty desk right in front of mine. The first spitball hit her before she got halfway there. That's when Mrs. Grouch appeared. When Mrs. Gouch was having a rough day, she sometimes snapped, and our alter ego, who we called Mrs. Grouch, appeared. None of us were brave enough to call her that to her face, of course, except maybe Robbie Colson, who usually spent at least 2 days a week staying after school for detention. "That's it!" she yelled, and the room became instantly silent. To be fair, it wasn't really Mrs. Gouch's fault she was angry. It was after lunch by the time Stephanie arrived, and Mrs. Gouch had already been having a frustrating day. Robbie Colson and his band of bullies, which mostly consisted of Bill Cape and Bryce Bookerman, had been giving her a hard time all morning. It had started just 5 minutes into the day when the dry erasers went marking. "Has anyone seen the markers?" she had asked. When no one answered, her eyes moved to Robbie. Even with no evidence, Robbie was a pretty good bet if you had to pick someone who had done something wrong. "Don't look at me," he protested. "Why do you always think it's me?" "Perhaps because it usually is, Robbie," she replied. "Are you sure you don't know anything about the markers?" "How do you know someone didn't hide them in their desk?" Bryce asked. "Yeah, I think I saw Susie playing with them a few minutes ago," Bill chimed in. Susie McDonald had a look of shock on her face. "Can you check your desk, please, Susie?" the teacher asked. "But I didn't," Susie started. "I understand you didn't put them there, but can you please check?" Susie opened the lid to her desk. "It doesn't look like they're here, Mrs. Gouch," she said with a sigh of relief. "Try looking under her social studies book," Robbie said to the teacher with an attempt at an innocent look. Susie lifted the book, and they were there. All the color drained from her face, and her shoulders shook as she started to sob. She looked like she might be ill at any moment. "You 3 seem to know quite a bit about the inside of Susie's desk," Mrs. Gouch said, looking pointedly at the bullies as she put an arm around Susie's shoulders to console her. The bullies protested, but I could see that our teacher wasn't buying any of it. It looked like another detention was in store for them. "Jordan, can you walk Susie down to the nurse?" Mrs. Gouch asked. "Me?" "Yes, you, Jordan Waters, or is there another Jordan in the room I don't know about?" she added. No, ma'am, I answered lamely. I walked Susie down the hall. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to go back, so I stood outside the nurse's office reading the health bulletin board until I heard my name being called. I looked down the hall and saw my best friend, Justin Grant, coming my way. You get lost coming back to class? He asked. I was hoping to stay out here until English is over, I answered with a smile. If I can stall until lunch, then it's math class this afternoon. I was a whiz in math, and I loved to read, but I wasn't so good when it came to writing and spelling. Justin gave me trouble about this sometimes, but I didn't let it bother me since he's been my best friend since kindergarten. We'd better get back before Mrs. Gouch sends us out a search party, Justin said. If Robbie and his friends keep it up, there's no telling when Mrs. Grouch is going to show up. I nodded glumly and slouched back to the classroom. The rest of the morning had gone just as badly for Mrs. Gouch. It wasn't just the bullies either. Everyone seemed to be on edge and snapping at each other, but it was that spitball hitting Stephanie that finally put her over the edge. Stephanie was standing next to my desk. She had frozen in place when Mrs. Gouch yelled. I wondered what she had to be thinking. 2 minutes into my new classroom, and the teacher had already lost it. Mrs. Gouch stared at everyone in the class, but saved her sternest looks for Robbie, Bill, and Bryce. Even Robbie wasn't brave enough to return that look. Instead, he pretended to be searching for something in his desk. Mrs. Gouch didn't say anything for a moment, but you could tell she was thinking about her next step. What price would be paid for the day she had been through? She decided to take her frustration out on the whole class. Why do teachers do that? I didn't hide the markers or shoot the spitball, so why should I be punished? If you want to know the truth, I think Mrs. Gouch was just looking for an hour of silence when she hatched her evil plan. Everyone get out a pencil and a sheet of paper. I'm giving you an assignment, she said, her eyebrows dropping into a sharp V. The class responded with groans and frowns before Robbie could even open his mouth. Mrs. Gouch turned to him and said, and if you say one word, Robbie Colson, one single word, I'll be on the phone with your parents before that word even reaches my ear. Is that understood? I hoped that he would say yes. I wanted to see if that counted as saying one word, but Robbie just nodded his head in silence. No kid, not even a member of Robbie's band of thugs, wanted a call made to their parents. Detention was nothing compared to what your parents could do to you. Here is your assignment. I want you to add up all the numbers from 1 to 100, she said with something like an evil grin. No calculators and no talking while you are working, she added, and be sure to check your answers before you bring it to me. In stunned silence, I took out a sheet of paper and started to work. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 3 plus 3 equals 6. 6 plus 4 equals 10. 10 plus 5 equals 15. This is terrible. It's going to take forever, I thought. What a lousy way to spend an afternoon. And I like math. I wondered what the kids who didn't were thinking. I'd only added the first 5 numbers when Stephanie rose from her chair and approached Mrs. Gouch, who was leaning back contentedly in her chair. Mrs. Gouch was startled to see Stephanie standing in front of her with a piece of paper in her hand. What is it, Stephanie? She asked. I'm finished, ma'am, Stephanie said with a smile. Everyone in the classroom put their pencils down and watched the interaction. You added all the numbers from 1 to 100, Mrs. Gouch asked. Yes, ma'am, Stephanie responded. All 100 numbers? Yes, ma'am. And you're certain your answer is correct? Yes, ma'am, replied Stephanie politely. And what's the answer? 5,050. That's impossible. Impossible? There's no way you could have added all of those numbers in less than a minute, Miss Gouch said angrily. You just made up a number. Want to bet a class party on it? Stephanie asked as her lips curved into a sly smile. You're on, Mrs. Gouch growled. The class watched as the teacher began to punch numbers into her calculator. Staring at me isn't going to get you the right answer, she said to the class. Get back to work. 40 minutes later, Mrs. Gouch stared at her calculator in disbelief. The number 5,050 stared back at her in glowing green lights. Man, that pizza is going to taste great. I gave Stephanie a big grin as she returned to her seat. How did you do that? I whispered. I'll show you after school, she replied, and that's when the idea for the math club popped into my head. At the time, I had no idea where that idea would take us. All right, so you heard the first chapter, right? Are your kids hooked? Are you interested in hearing more? I mean, what happens with Stephanie? What is the trick to that? How did she add up all those numbers 1 to 100 that quickly without having to do too much work? And is she going to be the class hero because she won them a pizza party? Let me think about the book and comment below with that. Thank you so much for watching. please follow us along on Facebook as well as YouTube so you can get alerted for when the next video comes out. Thank you.